Yeah, I'd just like to tell you the story about like how God found me when I was at my lowest, right? The lowest I've ever been in my life. This is a story about like losing my mom when I was in prison, right? Okay, so this is like 10 years into my 92 years to life sentence, right? So because like I stopped like getting into bullshit like around like my 8th year in prison, like just bullshit ass fights, right? So by now my points went down, right? So I land on a level 3. And on a level 3 it's like really like lovely, right? Because it's like less security, right? Well, a little bit more freedom, like a little bit more freedom than the maximum security I came from, right? So I was working as a teacher's aide, and then one day they called me to the lieutenant's office, right? And I was like, oh man, like, because normally when they call me to the lieutenant's office, it's like I end up like leaving in handcuffs because they either found like some weapons in my cell or like drugs or whatever's, right? Because back then I was like really into this prison shit, right? I was doing what gangsters do, right? So they call me to the lieutenant's office, and then they sit me down, and then they tell me my mom passed away, right? So I was like, oh man, like that's like the worst like ever, right? Even worse than getting sentenced to 92 years to life, right? So I was like, oh, okay. And then, I mean, I mean, they were cool with it, right? Like they treated me like a human being, right? So they asked me if I wanted to go to my cell or go back to work, right? So I said no, I'm gonna go back to work, right? Because like I didn't want to like go back to my cell and just think about this. So I go back to work and then I'm chilling, right? And then that night was like super crazy, right? Like I don't know, I can't even explain like the emotions I went through that night, right? But anyways, so I'm chilling, right? And then I'm grieving, and then a week goes by, right? And then I'm like kind of like chilling. I don't really mess with anybody, right? So I just do my own thing, and then I'm playing basketball one day, and then I get into a fight, right, over some bullshit, right? And I end up in the hole. And then people that's been in prison, they know like when you end up in the hole, like you don't really have nothing. You just have like your boxes and your t-shirt, right? So I end up in the hole, and then normally in the hole there'd be like a couple books in your cell, but when you get there, right? But this time there was no books in the cell. There was just a Bible, right? And I still have that Bible to this day, right? And I'll show it to you next time, right? But I wasn't even thinking about God at that time, right? It just so happened that He was there for me, right? But so like I'm not really like I'm not really like reading it. I'm only like reading it like once in a while, right? Because I'm like working out or whatever's, right? Or I'm busy watching like the paint dry or whatever's, right? And then so I end up reading it, like not looking for God or anything, right? Just reading it just to kill time, right? And then damn, like I just felt so much love like when I read the New Testament, right? And then like I felt like Jesus, like his love, like everything. And then I realized like the message of the Bible, of the New Testament, is like love, right? So if you lead with love in like every aspect of life, I realized that like life can be great, right? So yeah, I mean, I just tell you that because like I was not looking for God at that time. I mean, God probably like knew that I was troubled, I was brokenhearted, I was broken spirited, and I really needed some grace from him. So he showed up when I was like at my lowest, right? Like a life sentence and losing your mom, like that's gotta be like the worst case scenario ever, right? So I just tell you that to tell you this, that like you can never be too far off, like God is there, and God's love is like overwhelming. So just a little food for thought, like don't give up, it'll be all right. Take care. God bless.